go. They're going to move from one house to the other. All these sharing economy. I don't know if you guys remember all that. Whatever happened to the sharing economy anyway?
We're all going to live on a commune together.
I don't know exactly. That's where it came from. Well, then you had this. Then what happened is people said, you know what? Housing prices are like everyone's fearful of buying a house, and no one wants to buy a house in 2007, 2008. Then like the second half of 2009, things started to get spicy again. But for 7 and 8, and really the first half of 9. Buying a house, people would have laughed at you. Why are you buying a house? And then all of a sudden, the prices got cheap enough and people said, you know what, I need more room or I need less room. I want to live in this area versus that area. And then all of a sudden, the momentum started. And look what happened. Look how fast it became a housing boom with the higher mortgage standards. It became a housing boom with people needing to put more money down.
And rates were higher then, too.
So you can say there was a housing crash, but it really it sorted itself out really quick in about 3 years. But it didn't sort itself out really quick after 3 years because all of a sudden mortgages became easier to get. It was just the opposite. That was demand driven.
Yes,
you guys get the difference?
Came back.
Right.
And, statistically, a lot of people have shown that if you did have a foreclosure or a short sale, but you were once a homeowner, all those people had the impetus to go back and they wanted to buy a house again too. And there's been enough time and enough credit correction that's part of the demand as well.
Yep.
So a couple more points, then we'll wrap. Number 4, the new batch of motivated buyers are able to lock in super low interest rate mortgage loans with significant down payments, thus negating much of the risk of defaults. Now that's kind of halfway between a demographic point and what we talked about with mortgages. But the point is that if there's less risk of default, then there's less risk of a housing crash. Okay, now I thought this next point was interesting. This was from an economist that said easy credit fueled the housing boom of 2005 to 2008. Easy credit, right? Cheap credit fuels today's market. There's a big difference. The fundamentals today are more sound, according to, again, virtually every economist.
And common sense, by the way.
And not to mention common sense.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you put a big chunk of money down, you're not going to just voluntarily default. And realistically, the amount of down payment that's required, if you guys just look at like a house that's $350 and let's say, 15 years ago that same house was say $200,000, the probability of there being that level of depreciation, any meaningful depreciation where people wipe out their down payments. But remember, people still need houses to live in. And again, here's the finer point I don't think very effectively making a second ago. Now that people know that housing will come back, even if there is a drop in prices, lessens the likelihood there'll ever be a drop in prices because people know that on the other side of this, housing hardship, it's going to come back. Yeah. So people are going to be more likely to hold on to their housing, even if in certain markets there is some sort of depreciation wave, which we're not anticipating. Highly unlikely. Right.
But it's funny you mentioned that because I've had a couple of coaching calls where we're getting to the time of year where school's letting out, people are starting to do vacations. And there's been some listings that, oh my gosh, they sat for a weekend, and so these agents think, oh no, things are changing because it sat for a weekend. Totally different.
Well, okay? Julie, it is kind of freakish to think that most of the agents listening to our podcast, and this is the number one listened to daily coaching podcast for agents in probably the world, have never sold in the normal market.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that a temporary slowdown feels more dramatic than it is.
But they have no clue.
They don't have any comparison. That's why we're trying to educate them.
Yes.
Okay, so last point is a little bit different. We're going to get off of the millennial thing for a second, but still demographic. Point number 5, there is no, quote, silver tsunami of new listings as was once anticipated. Baby boomers are indeed retiring, passing away, and downsizing, but the success of VRBO, that's vacation rental by owner, home away, and Airbnb, has taken a big bite out of otherwise available homes for sale. I've seen statistics